G'day folks, with Ark Survival Evolve's official network finally shutting down, they released a community crunch which had a whole bunch of questions and answers regarding Ark Survival Ascended and what we might expect at the end of the month when it's hopefully actually received on time. So with the launch date itself, we're expecting that it will be launched around the 31st of October, or at least somewhere before then, as that's the deadline that Snail Games, the publisher, has with the funding arrangements they've actually made with Shutdown. Ark Survival Ascended will be able to be played on the Xbox Series S, X, PlayStation 5, and the PC, Windows, and Steam storefronts. Now, as to why they're doing it, this is a rather interesting blurb that they've put up in their community crunch. They talk about how they're refining their development team's skills on UE5 and how they're using that to then push next-gen titles such as Ark 2. And the other side of things is the business reasons. Being able to actually develop the sequel and no longer being able to release paid expansions for Ark Survival Evolved. Obviously, the long-term survival of the studio requires that they do something to generate revenue while they develop Ark 2. And we've seen some rather interesting news in the past there about Ark 2 being delayed like crazy, and the funding arrangements that Snail Games has entered into with Shutdown, and all the money that they're borrowing left, right and centre. So Ark Survival Ascended obviously provides them with an opportunity to raise money. And here they really kind of clarify what's going on with Ark 2, that it is being designed as a Souls-like adventure, so it won't necessarily be the same sort of game as Ark Survival Ascended, or Evolved, for that matter. As well as it's going to provide the community with an evergreen classic Ark experience, interesting mouthful they've put in there, and one that will continue to grow on a cleaned up code base, leveraging new technology, etc, etc. And the real key takeaways in that whole thing is, one, they're refining their team's development skills, which means that they're essentially learning on the job, and we're going to be playing a game that they're learning how to program in. That has a sense of foreboding, but really with the business case, I don't like Snail Games. I do like Wildcard, or at least I can give them a bit more respect because obviously the game is something that I enjoy. So I want to be able to buy the game, to give them money to be able to develop the game and actually make things good. But at the same time, I don't like supporting Snail Games as of all the junk that they've been involved lately. I do like that Ark 2 is actually a different style of game. The fact that it's a Souls-like adventure, it's not something that I want, but at least what I can now basically look forward to is that Ark Survival Ascended is essentially the Ark 2 that I'm probably going to be looking for. Because if they clean up the back end of the system by moving to the Unreal Engine 5, if all of the crap that's under the bonnet is all basically gone, and they're able to develop cleanly straight off the top of that and give us a much better experience, it will almost seem like a brand new game when we actually get into it. And I'll be interested to see with the slight changes and tweaks that they're actually doing along the way, as well as the refreshed environment. So overall, I'm very pleased with that particular caption of the community crunch, despite the fact that they do talk about how it seems like they're learning on the job. So in terms of changes other than Unreal Engine 5, there will be the cross-platform modding. We've already heard about this in the past, how they're going to be utilising Overwolf, and so all the other consoles and whatnot will be able to partake in all the fun mods that the PCs have been able to use over the years and really see what kind of gameplay other people have been putting into the Ark Survival Evolved. As far as new content and features go, there is actually quite a lot going on here, with 11 brand new creatures, a new minimap system, an overhaul of the structures, as well as various different gameplay items. An interesting one comes up next is a new navigation mesh and a pathfinding overhaul. A mouthful, and that is great, but think of that as the AI pathing. And the AI pathing has always been terrible when you're running around with like a pack of raptors following you around through the woods, and they get caught on everything and you have to go and find them again after you've lost them all. So hopefully that one will be an interesting one to see if that's improved a hell of a lot. Total UI revamp and new photo mode. We kind of had that before, but I guess it wasn't for individual players, it was for people with the relevant commands. A new camera system for players and dinos with the option to revert to the old system. And new player character assets with revamped and improved customizations. I remember reading something about that, it's possibly actually in here, where the players, they'd really redone the player system to make the way you actually customize the player really nice and neat. And then they decided just to go, stuff it, we'll give everyone control over all of the bones and sliders and things like that, so people can still create their really warped, crazy characters, which has been kind of typical of a lot of the playthroughs that I've seen other people doing. Gamepad virtual cursor UI input system. I'm sure that makes sense for people who are on consoles or who use gamepads. I do not. And a new Dino Manager system with real-time status and track locations of all your creatures. Oh my goodness. We can track the locations of our dinosaurs. That sounds wonderful. And there's obviously probably going to be much, much more. As far as pre-ordering goes, there is going to be no pre-order. There's going to be no exclusive content. And as far as what I can tell from reading through a lot of this stuff, end of the month is when it's going to get released. Probably roughly 1 week before that is when we're going to start seeing things like trailers and in-game shots. Because at this point in time, we haven't actually seen much in-game at all. We've seen little snippets of a tree. And I think they tried to mock up some stuff with some buildings, but the sizes of the pieces didn't match what was existing in the game, and so it wasn't very trustworthy. And yeah, we just haven't seen anything. But the indication is that we won't actually see anything until about a week before, and nobody's actually obligated to actually buy into this, and so we're just going to have to wait and see. And I do like the fact that there's actually going to be no exclusive content or pre-ordering. So the game should just release, and we're going to get it. And that should be really, really nice. And hopefully it won't be early access or anything silly like that. It's just like, here's the game, off you go. Now, with the crossplay, that's going to be a little bit strange. They're basically going to have crossplay between the Xbox, the Windows Store, and the PlayStation, but Steam will not have crossplay enabled at launch. And this is so that they can actually do a lot of the issue resolution on Steam. And I'm guessing all the other stuff will kind of get left alone, mainly because things like Xbox and stuff like that, they actually have to have set releases, and they have to actually be issued permission to be able to do those releases and things like that. And so it's obviously much easier for them to do all of their development work on Steam, to resolve all the issues and try and make it work before then actually scheduling the rollouts to those other systems that actually require them to actually have a set release schedule, whereas Steam, they can just go ahead and do it whenever they want. So it kind of means that I guess the Xbox, the Windows Store, and the PlayStation people, you're probably going to have to live with a buggy mess, while Steam, you're kind of going to be the guinea pig that gets the patches that may or may not break the game or may fix things, so on and so forth. So it's going to be an interesting mess while the initial rollout goes on, mainly because if they are learning on the job and they're trying to work out how UE5 works out, so on and so forth. I do anticipate it being a buggy mess, but this is Ark that we're talking about. It has been a buggy mess in the past, but if they can really start off with a good footholder from the beginning and iron out those bugs, I'm sure people will be able to look past it, as long as the progress is there, unlike games like Atlas, who they've been left in the dirt. It really feels like all the developers have got stolen from Atlas to work on the Ark stuff, and the development stops, it starts, then you don't hear anything forever. There's a whole fan base of people there, including myself, that really like Atlas, but it just doesn't get the time of day. But when the development was happening, people were a lot happier with what was going on. There was a lot more players actually being in there because you could see that something was actually going on, whereas it's been dead for months upon months now. But that's a whole separate conversation in terms of Atlas, seeing as we're talking about Ark. And so with the crossplay stuff, full crossplay it's got a time frame of around December, so it's actually not that far off, releasing late October, hopefully having all your full crossplay stuff sorted out by December. So I guess they're expecting that there'll be a couple of months of bug fixing before the December time frame. Hopefully everything will be nice and sweet for the multiplayer side of things with the crossplay. So with the next point is one that I did find it interesting to read. They've made a few changes to how the servers actually work. Obviously with the new code base, they're able to do a lot more with what's going on. And so they've increased the range with which stasis actually goes on. And so this is where you move away from something and the object disappears. And as you come back in, you see it sort of render in. And they're saying that they should be able to increase the range by about 70%. And so you end up having a lot more stuff visible at much further away. And they're kind of saying that they'll keep their servers capped at 70 players on official, whereas other people can pretty much do whatever they want as long as you've got the ability to run it. And it's all to do with simply the building counts and the dino counts. And so hopefully with the new engine in the background, a lot more can actually be done, and you'll be able to see things from much further away, hardware depending. So what kind of content changes did they make for day one? This was an interesting question I saw posted out there. You know, are we going to have tech and cryopods? As they were actually introduced later on with various different DLCs. I think it was the Extinction DLC that brought them in, and we're not going to have them. They're going to make it like it was the island prior to all the DLCs being launched. There won't be any tech variants and there won't be any cryopods. They've changed quite a lot in terms of how the caves and all the other things look and work, for how the choke points and whatever else, and they're hoping to see the various different metas that people create will shift quite dramatically, but they talk about monitoring that and, you know, see how things actually go. One of the other things that they're going to be doing, at least on the official network, so for people who are unofficials, you will have a config for this. They're going to disable leveling of movement speed on the creatures and players. I saw some other people on Twitter basically saying that, you know, movement speed made no sense in terms of PvP, and I can totally understand that. And apparently, yep, it is disabled. You will not be having movement speed on the official network. And one other thing here, which is, it's, I guess, a slightly minor, but not so minor. They talk a little bit about breeding changes, but they didn't really do much of a change here. They basically had it where the mutations were based on the wild stat multiplier, but they've given it its own. So it's basically just, I guess, given us some extra config items to be able to manipulate how the mutations actually work. And they have not fixed getting more than 20 mutations, and removed the 255 cap so that servers can specify a cap. Okay, right, so you can just actually put it into a config how many mutations you'll actually be able to get to. And yeah, that's sort of, there's a lot of other stuff that they got in here. They actually say, you know, there's quite a lot of other things, and if they were to talk about everything, it would just go on forever and ever. And to be honest, I'd love them to. I want them to put more detail out there. I want to put some in-game stuff so that we can actually see what's going on. For the rest of the stuff in the crunch, it's not really stuff that I want to actually put a comment to. It's all pretty stock standard stuff about, you know, what parts of NVIDIA are actually going to be used, why did they use 5.2 instead of 5.3 for Unreal Engine, and so on and so forth. And so there's not really a lot of stuff to comment crazy about that. People can really look it up for themselves if they really want to dig that deep into it. The main things that I really wanted to look at, which we've already sort of covered, was the fact that, yeah, Unreal Engine 5 is being used. The people are learning their skills on the job, or at least that's roughly what I'm reading into it. And that, yeah, if you buy Ark Survival Ascended, they're saying that it's basically supporting the studio so that they can actually develop this as well as Ark 2. Yeah, and, you know, there's a lot of nitty-gritty stuff going on in the background with that. I sort of covered it before in one of my previous videos with the funding arrangements that Snail Games, the publisher, has with Nitrado, and so on and so forth, as well as the in-game cheating that people may or may not have seen videos going on about. There's all kinds of nasty stuff that's a big stink that sort of sits around Snail Games. And, you know, you'd love them to divorce themselves from Ark, but that will never happen, given that this is the cash cow that they've got. And unless something drastically goes wrong by the end of the month, I don't see any of that changing. And there are certainly plenty of people that are going to be supporting Studio Wildcard by buying into Ark Survival Ascended, myself included, because I really do want to actually see it. And yeah, I want to see it, I want to experience it, not just watch somebody else's video. And I would assume that there's a lot of other people in the same boat. So yeah. Yeah, let me know what you think. Is there anything in the crunch that really stood out for you in terms of all of this information that we've sort of had unloaded on us? And, you know, what's the thing that you're looking forward to most in Ark Survival Ascended? Thanks for listening in. My name's Scurvy, and I'll catch you in the next one.